Went to a funeral this past week, and it was a deal. My name is Matt Hofer, and this is Walkabout. My lovely wife had told me before how it was going to be, and when my favorite Tia died some months ago, when we were still in Montana this past year, the funeral, in my opinion, was pretty dang fast. I mean, I didn't really believe her. She died, and 3 days later, she was planted. Now, every funeral that I'd ever been to in the States, and I've been to a few, have an adjustment period, meaning that one day is the death, and then there's the notification of the family, and then depending on how far away the loved ones live is directly correlated to when the funeral is. So, for example, if person X were to pass away, the funeral would be at least 2 weeks from the time of death. Because people who want to come have to adjust their lives, buy a plane ticket, drive, take off at work, find suitable care for the pets and the kids, and take them out of school, find babysitters, and the list of things that suddenly need to be juggled goes on and on and on. When my dad passed away, he wasn't even in Montana where he lived. The motorcycle accident happened in Oklahoma, and that's where he passed, and that's where he was cremated. And all of this took a good week and a bit. Then the various newspapers had to be contacted, and the obituaries had to be placed, and there were so many little odds and ends that needed to be attended to. And for us, it was decided that the best thing would be to have a celebration of life some months in the future. And this is absolutely normal in my opinion, in my circle. I had a dear friend die, and because of the time of the year, it was decided that the ceremony would be the following summer, like 8 months away. Even with embalmment and, burial takes time, a week, maybe, at the very minimum. In fact, as I sit here, I can't think of one funeral I've ever been to where it took place under 2 weeks to plan somebody. So imagine my surprise when my wife gets a text with a funeral announcement. She says, Ophelia died. What? Was she even sick? What happened? When did she die? When is the funeral? I mean, I had so many questions. My wife called Ophelia's husband, Noel, on the spot. Now, Noel and Ophelia lived in the next tower over from us. An older couple, and if I would have to guess, in their late 70s to early 80s. Noel was fit as a whip, and Ophelia was, well, politely not. Not as heavy as Jack Spratt's wife, but certainly not Jack Spratt either. And Noel, on the other hand, was the epitome of Jack Spratt. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just Google Jack Spratt. All your questions will be answered. I first met Noel at the gate when I was trying to talk to one of the guards. He was a talkative fellow, and he cared not that I didn't speak a lick of Spanish. He just went on and on and on. I was like, yeah. Over time, my wife and I were introduced to his wife, and then we were invited to their apartment for coffee, and then later for lunch. And Ophelia, man, she was a world traveler, and Noel was not. He was a homebody. Ophelia had a trip to Israel, in fact, only a week before the whole Palestinian attack occurred, and so she had to cancel that one. But then one day, inexplicably, they sold their apartment and moved to an adjacent building, not in the same complex. It's just around the corner, but, walking distance. And they're renting now. And of course, this made no sense to me. It was explained away because the news place was bigger and blah, 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 blah. But to me, very weak explanations. But, who am I to judge? Things just didn't add up in my brain. Ophelia was she was a master craftsman. She was a regular Martha Stewart without the ankle monitor, and she took my wife in and tutored her and in the finer parts of crafting, and, life went on. Then it didn't. She hung up the phone with Noel, and I had all these questions, like, when did she die? Was she sick? Did she get into an accident? Did she paint the wrong picture of the FARC leader? When's the funeral? And all that stuff. And, I tried to have a little fun. And, As a copper, you see so much death and pain and heartbreak, and the only way I can deal with that stuff is to make jokes, as do most of the colleagues that I know. And it's not that we don't care, it's just that we deal with it differently and we deal with the humor. And sometimes when you see cops laughing, standing around some horrible tragedy, it's a coping mechanism because you see so much of it. But not surprising, my wife did not appreciate the dark humor. But I was shocked at her answer. She died today. The funeral's tomorrow. She had a brain tumor. Well, that explains the selling of the apartment. And evidently she wanted to use the money to travel before she died, and she did. But wait. Hold up a minute. She died today and already has a funeral announcement, hours old, and the funeral's planned in this little Catholic church down the street for tomorrow? That's crazy. Things move pretty fast in Colombia, she answered. Well, don't expect that kind of express service for you, I said. She smiled. Ha, there it is. I got a smile. We were on our way to do something, and I don't remember what it was, but when we got back, we stopped in to see Noel, and I hugged him, and it was like hugging a skeleton with clothes on. He cried in my arms, and then we sat with him a while, and the biggest problem with Ophelia's passing was that she was the caretaker of this 40-year relationship. Poor Noel, he was just along for the ride. Ophelia took care of everything, and Noel was just as happy as a clam, fluttering here and there like a butterfly, and talking to whomever he could about the latest book or fun fact or whatever he found out about that day, and not a really care in the world, except for now he has lots of them, I assure you. The next day, we went to the funeral home and sat with him a while, and then a few hours later, we found ourselves in this little church just down the block. It's just down the block here. This little church can't be more than 40 feet wide. It's sandwiched between a pet store / veterinarian place and an apartment complex, a supermarket with a nail salon to the left, and a very small, itty-bitty little church. And in fact, the name of the church is Quasi Parroquia La Divina Misericordia, or the Almost Parish of the Divine Mercy, which is really funny to me. We choose a pew about halfway up and slide in to the left, and there's a statue of St. Anthony of Padua next to us. And I would have no idea who this guy was if it wasn't for the trip to Europe. And we stayed in the city of Padua and visited the basilica there, and I learned all about him. Most notably, his name wasn't Anthony, it was Fred. And he wasn't from Padua, he was from Lisbon. Now, his name really isn't Fred, it's Fernando, but I like to call him Fred. I have a buddy in Oklahoma who has St. Anthony as his patron saint, so I snap a picture of him and send it to him, and he quickly responds back, "That's my boy!" And then I get distracted by this little old lady who's in front of the church in one of the back rooms used for confessionals and the whatnots of the Catholic rituals. She keeps sticking her head out, like the door jams here, and she sticks her head out. And man, I've seen her before, but I just can't place it. As more people keep filing in, I look back and I'm shocked. I see Doris, the ugly stepsister, and Shrek walk in and have a seat, and that throws me for a complete loop. This he, she, him, whoever, he reminds me of the 6'6" cop in Oklahoma City who built like a brick shithouse, who decided one day to leave his wife and kids and fly to Thailand to become a woman. And you can cut your dick off, but you can't change bone structure no matter how many hormones you take. I turn back to the front and focus on the old woman who keeps sticking her head out from behind that door jamb. And man, how do I know her? The casket arrives, and I feel like it's a much too small casket to fit Ophelia in. I almost lean over and say something to my wife, but I decide not to. The old woman comes in full view now. She's holding some sort of silver cauldron of some sort and follows the priest to the back of the church where the casket is waiting. And then it hits me. It's the granny from the movie Hoodwinked. Look it up. It's a spitting image of this little lady who now walks past me and directly behind the priest, and the priest stops and puts some kind of stick with a ball. It's like a silver ball on the end of this stick into the cauldron. And he says in Spanish, "In the name of the Father," and he just swings this stick out and he flings it, and water goes everywhere. Flowers and the casket and everyone who has to be standing there. I feel like the priest is shaking this stick thing a little bit too vigorously, and Maybe a little priest humor, perhaps. I'm sure he'll laugh about it later. The priest sticks the ball into the stick ball thing into the cauldron again in the name of the sun, and he gives it a swing and a shake, and more water comes out, and water is dripping everywhere down the flower petals of the arrangement that's sitting on top of the casket and onto the casket and dripping off the heads and the faces and the shoulders of everyone around them. And in the name of the Holy Spirit, and more water. I mean, it's like a sprinkler system went off in this church, and there's water everywhere. Mascara and makeup is running down the faces of the women, and it's hard to tell if it's the water, the priestly water, or the tears. I mean, thank goodness there's only 3 persons of the Trinity and not 5 or 8. It's really all I can do to keep from laughing. In front of me is Doris, the 6'6" linebacker from the Dallas Cowboys, the granny from Hoodwinked with her hair and the cat-rimmed glasses from the 50s, and the completely soaked crowd standing around the casket. And then when this part of the ceremony is completed, everyone goes to the front of the church, and there's bad singing from the priest and halfway decent guitar playing from some random guy in the corner, and then standing and sitting and standing and sitting. And of course, I don't know what's going on. I don't understand a thing. And I only stand and sit when everyone else does. And I look around, oh, they're standing, so I should stand too. And oh, they're half standing, half sitting. What do I do? And then there's a part of the service where everybody greets everybody, and bam! I'm transported back to the 7th grade in Holy Family Catholic School in Great Falls, Montana, and I'm sitting behind Tammy Wingham, nervously waiting for this part of the Mass when I have to shake Tammy's hand. I have a huge crush on this girl, and every time I sit behind her, I get so nervous because I have to touch her. Yeah, I know. I'm shaking hands. But still, it's touching. And now all I can think about is that time in my life, and we only attended Holy Family for a year and then moved back to the farm, where I went to the one-room schoolhouse for 8th grade in Chester for high school, and I never thought about Tammy again until this exact moment. Then Lori comes into my mind. She's a girl who couldn't run, no matter how much we tried. And believe me, we tried to get her to run. Then there was Bill and more kids in that class, of course, but those were the 3 that their names actually came to my mind. Man, it's so weird. I wonder where Tammy is now, and I wonder why Lori couldn't run. I wonder what prison Bill is in. And just like that, the service is over. And then there's more splashing in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and poor Noel, he and everyone around him is just soaked. The casket is taken out of the church and into the hearse. We're invited to go to the crematorium, but I decline. My wife instead jumps in a car and she's whisked away, and I walk back to the apartment and I start my search for Tammy Wingham. No run Lori and Bill. I find Tammy and I reach out, and she's gracious enough to lie when asked if she remembers me. And she's also very kind in sending pictures of that yearbook from that year. In 1989, there was a house fire at the Hofer household, and all the yearbooks and pictures and all the memorabilia and all the little knickknacks and all those things got burned up in a flash. And so it's nice to see the faces and the kids and all that stuff from that year. A lot of memories for sure. A lot of memories. Man. So thanks Tammy and Bill and No Run Lori, and thanks Doris and the Granny and Noel and Ophelia for some great memories. And that's it. That's all there is this week on Walkabout. It is a perfect 70 degrees right now outside. Perfect. And I'll let you know next week. Keep you posted on the house hunting, and if you go to Walkabout 751 on my Instagram, I'll share some pictures with you about the parish and Tammy and Bill and Nora and Lori and that time in my life. And we'll catch you next time on Walkabout. Take it easy.